because I've noticed this for years. After 2 years, 45 tax cuts have failed many Americans, and that's the truth. It's not just opinion. It's the truth on what we see. This month marks the 2-year anniversary of 45's major legislative accomplishment, or at least what he thinks is his accomplishment, but it's not, his rewrite of the tax code. As we head into an election year, you can bet that taxes and the economy will be the topics of debate. 45 will no doubt want voters to give him credit for his tax law, which he promised would lead to more investment, more jobs, higher wages, and faster growth. But none of these promises have been fulfilled. From a purely economic standpoint, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 has been an enormous flop. Let's start with jobs. Has the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act created more millions of new jobs as was promised? In a sensible word, in a sensible world, no. In the 4 years prior to the passage of the GOP tax cut, the tax economy added an average of 213,000 jobs each month, according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. In the nearly 2 years since the law passed, average job creation has actually declined by an average of 11,000 per month. The White House promised that the tax cuts would result in an annual wage increase of $4,000 per household. Again, not even true. In the 2 years since the law passed, wage growth after accounting for inflation rose only slightly from 1% to just about 1.4% per year for non-supervisory workers, according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. That difference, even if it were fully attributable to the tax cuts, amounts to less than $400 for a full-time worker. So much for your $4,000 raise. We have been told over and over again that tax cuts for the rich are good for the overall economy. However, there's not much solace to be found in gross domestic product either. In the 4 years before the law passed, real GDP grew by an annual average rate of about 2.4, according to data from the Bureau of Economic Analysts. In the nearly 2 years since, the GDP growth rate has inched only slightly higher to an annual average of 2.5. These lackluster results should not, in the end, be very surprising. The claim that a huge tax cut for the wealthy and corporations would trickle down to everyone else was based on an outdated and discredited set of ideas for how the economy works. In that old framework, the way to produce a better economy is to get out of the way of job creators and let the free market do the rest. A tax cut for corporations then should have reduced the cost of capital and induced them to invest more, which ultimately is supposed to create jobs and push up wages, which didn't happen. But even that very first step never happened. In the last 2 years, the growth rate of private direct investment has substantially declined. In the 4 years before the law passed, private direct investment grew by about 3% annually, according to data compiled by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. In the 2 years since the law was enacted, that rate is down to 2.5%. The ideal that tax cuts aimed at corporations and the rich would bestow economic gifts on all of us is flawed, because that's not how the economy works in real life anyway. Corporations don't make investment decisions based on tax giveaways, and wages don't automatically increase with tax cuts or with productivity improvements. 45's signature legislative accomplishment has turned out to be an expansive failure, which means everything he touches dies anyway. He will run on his economic record next year, but he should be careful what he wishes for, given that his tax cut was a bust. Voters may not be inclined to trust his economic stewardship. I never trusted him anyway, so that's just the way it is.